This is Macro Analytics, delivering frank conversations on global macroeconomics and market analysis, outside the mainstream, featuring discussions and debates between Gordon T. Long, publisher and editor of GordonTLong.com, and his guests. The content of this discussion is strictly the opinion of the participants. It is in no way a solicitation for business, nor is it to be considered investment advice of any sort. Always consult a registered investment advisor before making any investment decision. These discussions are extremely hard-hitting and terribly frank, and parental discretion is advised. Now, on to the show.
Good morning. I'm Gord Long with GordonTLong.com, and I have with me this morning Charles Hugh Smith, very well-recognized writer on the web, who is the publisher of the website of2minds.com and certainly well-known to all of our regular listeners. Welcome back, Charles.
Thank you, Gordon. Glad to be here.
You have a new book out. We're going to talk about it here this morning, at least some of the content in it. We've picked some subjects from the book, and I have them up here as a list. And I want to make sure we have time, so let's just jump right into it and talk about this new age and occupational drivers.
Well, Gordon, you have in many of your shows discussed that one of the key dynamics in the new era is that corporations only have costs. They don't have profits anymore. In other words, the era of huge margins is gone. And the only way left for many companies to cut costs is to trim employment. And so it's either outsourced to lower costs, or it's replaced with automated software or robotics. And these are trends that you can't counter. You can't pass a law and say, we're going to make these trends go away. These are the new economy, and trying to erect trade barriers and you name it. None of these kind of policy changes is going to affect this. At least that's the way I see it.
And it's going to accelerate, and it'll accelerate at a phenomenal rate based on the new technologies that are coming. We are all familiar with robotics and the software bots, but they're now replacing industries that were untouchable before. I have up this chart here on services showing that areas that were considered, as I said, untouchable, but over the next 5 to 6 years, there will be massive cuts in these areas based on labor savings. And we've done a couple shows on commercial retail real estate and how the square footage is going to be reduced and the number of employees that's needed as they go online and balance bricks and mortars with the addition of the new technology, kiosks, etc., that's coming in. That's a fact. But there's new types of work that's replacing it. But they're not new types of work where they're being advertised in the newspaper.
Right. And I just want to mention two aspects of this whole topic of labor costs have kept rising over decades. And these are trends that are we can't really counter by just cutting the wage we pay people, although that's all the companies have left. And I just want to mention two of the drivers. One is Baumol's disease, which is a term to describe the fact that that industries that have very high productivity increases, the cost of their goods fall. And of course, we all know that's technology, right? Computers used to cost $10,000 in today's money, and now they cost $500. But the industries that aren't tradable, the industries that are stuck in the domestic economy, like healthcare and higher education, those costs are soaring because there is no productivity gains. But there's an end to that process. And that once healthcare and higher education become too expensive that the economy can't support them, then those systems will have to undergo the exact kind of transformation we're talking about. All those high labor costs will have to be eradicated because they're simply unaffordable.
A lot of the industries we have are now maturing. That's a fact. And we talk about, technology, but a lot of the technology itself, whether it's computers, communications, networking, a lot of it is in fact at the stage it's maturing. It's happening very, very quickly because product life cycles themselves are getting so short. Used to be when I was in technology, a product life cycle was 4 years. Now it's 4 months or 8 to 10 months. And I can remember 15, 20 years ago, 85% of next year's revenues was still on the design board. Think of the risk that goes with that. I'm dating myself. Today, it's even shorter. So things are happening very, very quickly, high risk. So what happens is margin and costs, as we said, are centric. Why this is not going to change and is going to accelerate, and I don't mean to sound academic, but time is the new competitive dimension. Everything must be done quicker and faster because of this time to market, because of product life cycles, but because of the costs in the inventory, costs in the supply chain. So there's this fixation with corporations in trying to get down the costs. Therein lies the opportunity, Charles, because in all of these changes, corporations aren't doing training anymore. Because they can't afford it. Things are obsolete so quickly, it's better for them to go and hire somebody. Well, they can't find the people for a job, and then how long do they want it? But there's the need. So the biggest complaint corporations has, they can't find the skills. It's this multidisciplinary, cross-functional, we used to call them task forces, that they're desperate for. And so if you can position yourself that way, the opportunities are phenomenal to take advantage of this cost driver.
One thing that strikes me when, you hear a lot of people bemoan the loss of what they call good middle class jobs in factories and, manufacturing. But what we forgot is that those jobs were often required very little training, that you could learn the job in a couple hours. And the idea that you can pay somebody a middle class wage for doing work that can be learned in a few minutes or a few hours or a few days, that's a non-starter. Even if we completely closed the borders of the United States and said we're not taking any products from anywhere in the world, manufacturers would still automate because there's no way you can pay somebody $70,000, $80,000 a year to do a job that can be learned in 10 minutes. And so the future of work is multi-skill, being able to draw upon a variety of skills to solve problems that robots and computers can't solve.
Exactly. You've got some examples here under what you call the value proposition.
Right. I've broken it out, my analysis of how do you create value? That's the basis of work. What is work? Well, it's creating value. So there's three basic categories that are immune, if not immune, they're resistant to technological automation. One is high touch work, and that's opposed to low touch. Like fast food is low touch. We don't really care who serves us the meal, and many people would be happy to be served by a robot. It doesn't make any difference. There's no value added by that person's labor. But if you're, say, in psychotherapy, a robot is not going to cut it. Or if you go to a fine restaurant and you want the ambience and the service, then you're very concerned with the people that are providing you the service. So there's a lot of that kind of work in the economy that can't be automated. The second category is problem-solving work. And if we look at and Gordon, you're a technologist. You've worked in technology for decades, so you can probably describe this better than I can. But the way automation works is you take a process that leads to an end goal. In other words, this is what we want the process to end up at and the product results. Well, then you can chop that up and you can have software or a robot do that process. But there's a lot of other problems in life that we don't know exactly what the solution is. And so that's where human innovation and problem solving and collaboration have the key role there. And the last category is all work that can't be broken down into programmable processes. And one of my examples is marketing. I mean, if a corporation could buy a $100 software package that would brilliantly manage their entire marketing successfully, well, then they wouldn't pay, ad agencies hundreds of thousands of dollars. But it turns out that you can't really automate creative processes.
A process, you break it down and can be automated. And that's what's been happening for decades now. And it's got more sophisticated with the network. This whole supply chain is now global. And as you do that, huge amounts of jobs are made redundant. Where the flaw in that area is that's if it's stagnant. That is, the process is fixed over a period of time. Well, what's happening is everything's changing so quickly that the process that you had is being obsoleted, changed in real time. And what happens is you get cracks. You get fissures. You get white spaces. That is where they're not connected the way they were before. And therein lies the new types of job opportunities. Now, corporations then try and get in there and they call multidisciplinary task forces together to start trying to address it and figure out what skills they need to fix this problem. Well, suddenly there's new jobs, new contracts to go in and fix those particular problems in the process. And also, what should be done, not just in an existing process, but what we should be pointed at. And that's where the creative and the content creators are now required. Those are where the new jobs are.
Yeah, and so let's talk a little bit about the skills that you need to go out and succeed in this new emerging economy that, as you say, we're going to get whether we like it or not.
You have a great terminology. You call it ducracy. Is that what
I
pronounce
call it? Duocracy.
Duocracy. Okay, I need another O in there, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, and I think that that's one of the changes. Is it used to be you'd get a college degree and that would be taken as evidence that you could be trained to do all sorts of different jobs, but you didn't actually have any of those skills. And as Gordon and I have discussed in the past, nobody does any training anymore. So you're going to have to train yourself. And what employers want is they want to know what you can do, not what accreditation you have. And so if you get a law degree or something, hey, 20 years ago, that might have guaranteed you a job. Now there's hundreds of thousands of other people that also have law degrees. So it doesn't really accredit your skills, your integrity, your character, or the value of your social capital. So that's what the employers are looking for now, is we're operating more in a duocracy. And, Google, as we might have mentioned in previous shows, is now hiring people without college degrees if they can do the work that creates value for Google. And so I've created this term called the mobile creative, which is my sort of little phrase for the kind of people that are going to do very well in the emerging economy. And the mobile creative credo is trust the network, not the corporation or the state. And what that means is what we're really doing is we're seeking collaborators, opportunities, different income streams to apply a variety of our skills to. And so we're not trying to nail down a 40-hour-a-week job in a factory or an office. That model no longer has value for many sectors. And so the mobile creative tries to get as many skills as possible and builds on the social capital, people they know, skills that they have, and they look for opportunities to apply those skills. And I call that hybrid work. Because what you're really doing is you're not trying to do the same job, day in, day out for 30 years. You're flexible because that's the way the economy is now.
Assuming you understand that and you appreciate it, where's the work then? How do you find the job, the occupation, the career? I think you call it under the caption of hybrid ownership.
Right. And I think that, again, if we're thinking about the new economy as a duocracy, what you want to do is find opportunities to show what you can do. And a lot of opportunities have to start out in an unpaid position. And of course, this is the sort of trap of internship where young people are promised some sort of skills acquisition process by work. If only you work here for free. I don't approve of that model, but what I do approve of is seeking out problems. And a lot of problems are in community groups like churches or nonprofits. And all these organizations are absolutely desperate for go-to guys and gals to come in and solve problems. And so what you do is you find organizations that are doing the kind of work that you enjoy doing and that interests you, and you go find the problems and you solve them. And then you accredit yourself by posting how you solved the problem, who you worked with, and the processes you used online. And that typically this would be on your own website. And that the point here is you can't rely on a diploma or a one-page resume to accredit your skills and your character. You're going to have to do more than that, because the employer looks at a one-page resume and a diploma, and there's almost no information there, quite frankly. What do we know about the person? Well, they navigated higher education, but we don't know anything about their skills or experience, and we don't know much about their character, quite frankly. We don't know if they're honest, accountable, work well with other people, take responsibility, love problem solving. None of those things are visible in a degree and a resume.
When I'm seeing growing at a phenomenal rate, and it's because most of the opportunities today, jobs, are global in nature. As soon as you do anything on the internet, you quickly realize that no matter what you do, it's on a global basis, whatever kind of service that you're delivering. And so if you want to expand your business, You've got to be thinking globally. And how do you do that when the work you need to be done is in different countries? You're into this hiring and jobs, but that's obsolete. The kinds of models that I'm seeing is, I'll call it affiliates, alliances, joint ventures, and partnerships. And don't let those words hang out there as difficult words. Really what they are is the affiliate level is where people are sharing ideas and sharing some resources. So a person that, in our business, they've got an idea, they're creative, it fits with what we're doing, and they run with it. They're putting their sweat equity into it, and we're both investing some sharing or some resources, some skills, some commonality without putting any really money into it. Everybody's just investing in it. And that's where the job, if you would, is suddenly created. Now there's revenues that come out of that. And as the revenues start to come out of it, it forms into alliances where you're now starting to share the sweat equity. That is, you're sharing some revenues. You don't have issues with accounting because where the revenues are being created, the person who's creating them takes. And then it gets into a joint venture where you're starting to all of a sudden having to share some of the costs. And now you get into some accounting and then into partnerships where you're actually sharing the profits. And it's a rather complex set of how you do the accounting, but what it allows is the creative, the content, the people who can deliver, the doers, that allow them to grow their own business within a framework of other people coming together into these alliances. And this is not just two parties, can be multiple parties. And I just see phenomenal job opportunities and occupations globally in this new way of thinking. But it starts with somebody who's got an idea, who knows what they're talking about, that's seeing a market. And often not, you trip over each other because you're fishing in the same fishing hole, and suddenly you've got an alliance going, you've got an affiliate going, you've got a joint venture going. And we're talking, I believe these will be measured in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of jobs. The web is just turning this loose at a phenomenal rate. Are you seeing the same sort of thing?
Absolutely, Gordon. And I think that the alliances and collaboration opportunities you describe, the general term is social capital. And so when you're just working as an assembly worker in a factory, you've got zero social capital. You say hi to your buddies at lunch break, but you don't have any social capital. And so the social capital is increasingly important. In other words, it's who you know, who you can work with, who you can bring in to help you solve problems. And this collaborative model is actually very exciting because it's a lot more fun than just doing the same job for 30 years in a row, quite frankly. And so I want to mention that what we're talking about here is a lifestyle, not just a way of making money, but we're talking about a whole approach to life that's much more engaging and enjoyable than toiling away doing the same task for 30 years. And so what happens is that people are now afraid. And you and I have talked about this in the past. There's a sense of fear that the security that came from working for one institution for your whole life, or maybe a handful of institutions over your career, that's fading, and people don't know what's going to replace it. And what you and I are describing here is a model that replaces that. And on the surface, you might say, "Oh my gosh, you guys are talking about a very insecure way of a livelihood," but actually, from our point of view, it's much more secure. The vulnerable person is the one who's working for an institution that when that institution undergoes change, they're going to be laying off people. And with a collaborative kind of structure that we're talking about, you're making money from your own skills, which we call human capital, and from your collaborative skills, we call social capital. And the tools to do this are cheap computers, cheap 3D printers. The tools to make money are actually getting cheaper and cheaper.
A few years ago, if you wanted to do some of this work, you needed a T1, which was $500 a month for those who can remember that kind of technology. Now it's just an internet connection. The barriers to enter were phenomenal. They're not there today. You just got to know how to use them in regards to plugging into the network. But what is so critical is what you bring to the party in the ways of being self-motivated, goal-oriented, entrepreneurial in terms of attitude, knowing how to collaboratively work with other people, character, integrity, all these kinds of words that they don't teach you in school, but it's only when people have those that others want to work with them, and therefore you get brought into the deal flows, into the structure where, I said, affiliates, alliances. The work will find you by reputation, the same as a contractor, but it's now on a global basis. You'll suddenly find an email coming from a country you never heard of because somebody has heard, and then you start the dialogue. And I see that day after day. But you've got to plug into it. And the skills that you're bringing, there's entry-level skills. You've got to understand a certain area, certain content, certain technologies. But it's all those capital skills, those social skills that are so critical. I guess it used to be those were the skills that allowed you to start a business. But today they're the kinds of skills that allow you to be employed. And by employed, I mean making a living.
Yes. And Gordon, you hit a very important point, which I would summarize as become the person everybody wants to work with.
Exactly. The days of just being a loner doesn't work. It's the ability to bring people together, to bring skills together that people want to contribute together as a team. And those are not any longer necessarily within a company structure. They're within different people that are working independently in different areas of the world. And you will find each other. And you will find each other very, very quickly when you're on an idea, when you're on something that's new, because others will appreciate what it means. And that communication is going to happen very quickly. I see it with things like Twitter. You can be talking out an idea on Twitter, and suddenly the response you get from people you'd never even heard of, because the ability to connect is so phenomenal. But that's how it starts. And so that's where the types of job, employment, and revenues come. And the revenues, Charles, that come are not small. They're phenomenal. Like, people don't understand that the amount of money that's to be made. That's why these entrepreneurs in the Silicon Valley are walking away with hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right. And I think we should mention, too, that this model that we're discussing works just as well at the local level. In other words, if somebody assembles some small farmers and they go directly to sell their products to the local restaurants, this is a network. This is the same kind of alliances, collaboration that we've been discussing. And they're cutting out the middleman. There's no global corporations. They don't need the government to tell them how to do it. They're just grabbing it and they're creating value right there in their local town or neighborhood or city.
Exactly, Charles. I've been making points of going global. But if you're organizing a local farmers market or a local get-together or whatever, I mean, we're seeing revolutions that are being caused because the social networking of using the tools. Well, it goes right down to what you can do in a community. And if you're doing it effectively, I can tell you that revenues flow from it. We're using technology to reinvent the nature of work, if you can see it that way. If you can see that the glass is half full, not half empty, it's truly exciting. But if you're computer illiterate, if you're frightened away from the internet, but the older generation is, you've got a tough road in front of you. You've got to engage it. It's your comment. It's lifetime learning, continuous change, continuous learning that's so critical.
Yes. And Gordon, if I had to summarize our discussion, I would use a phrase you just mentioned, which was, we're reinventing work, and it's not really our choice. It's the economy demands it. And, technology doesn't care about what gets creatively destroyed. Technology is like a force of nature. And so we can bemoan something, we can decry something, we can wish it didn't happen, but that's really trying to stop life itself, because technology is going to move ahead and it's going to creatively destroy what is obsolete. And so we really need to recognize that the skills that are going to be successful are just the same old skills that are always successful in all of life, which is flexibility, lifelong learning, and working well with other productive people. And those skills are going to continue to create value.
A great discussion. We're going to come back and revisit this and start to peel this onion down a little bit more. So we're just touching the surface of this. But any closing comments you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Well, I'd like to say that my new book, Get a Job, Build a Real Career, and Defy a Bewildering Economy, is number 2 in the job hunting category on Amazon. So please visit my site at of2minds.com to read the first chapter or check it out.
Congratulations, Charles. Talk to you again next month.
Okay. Thank you, Gordon.
Bye.
This has been Gordon T. Long, editor and publisher of GordonTLong.com. New recordings are posted regularly and can be found at GordonTLong.com. New show notifications are available through RSS feed, iTunes, and other social networking venues at GordonTLong.com.